Hey guys, and welcome back to the HH Gaming YouTube channel. And today's video we're going to take another deep dive into Raid Shadow Legends, specifically the science behind Geomancer. Now most people in the game today probably have summoned 40 ancient shards and got their free Geomancer, and he is quite a unique epic for what he does with his passive. So we're not going to cover his entire kit. What we're really focused on here is looking at how his passive works, and specifically the calculations that go behind it and trying to understand how to maximize the efficiency of this skill. So his passive operates on two fronts. Firstly, he decreases the damage of all allies received by 15%. Now in our test we've determined that this happens regardless of whether there's a HP burn placed on the champion. The HP burn is only required for the reflection back to the enemy, and we can see this by a simple test. So I've jumped into a Doom Tower hard, floor level 2, just to do some tests, which is where our normal testing ground is. So we're going to run with Geomancer in the lead position, and Bistofus is going to be our target. So the first thing for us to check is, does that damage reduce every time, regardless of HP burn? So let's just run through this. Now we would expect it wouldn't, as the skill suggests that you need to do HP burn. However, when you watch, you'll see that his passive procs every single time. So he actually reduces the damage regardless. Let's just rerun that now with HP burn. So let's just get the HP burn out there, run a few things. So now the HP burn is out, so we'll still see the stone guard, but in this instance we'll actually see that he reflects damage. It doesn't matter which enemy attacks, he'll always reflect the damage back. So we'll see he'll proc it here, 1128. Now what you'll notice here is there is a consistent number being produced every time the attack happens. Now we can see that the difference in the 2256 versus what Bistofus was taking is clearly, as the skill suggests, that it takes more damage. Let's just have another quick look at what his passive does. So we're back looking at the champion here. So as I said, it reduces the damage that all allies receives by 15% and then deflects that damage back on to each enemy under a HP burn debuff, but it has to be placed by Geomancer. And whenever this champion is attacked, it deflects 30%. So you'll often see in a clan boss run, he takes two attacks. The first attack is effectively the damage that his allies will take. That's 15%, as we'll see in tests later on in this video. And the second attack will always be the damage that he receives. So we've specifically looked at the A2 attack on an affinity clan boss, which hits 4 times, so the second attack always reflects 4 of the same damage. Now what led us to believe that there must be some special calculation going on here is there is no randomness to the number that is returned by Geomancer. Every time Bistofus got hit, he returned the same number back to the Drake. So we did some testing, spent a couple of hours with the champion, and this is what we found. So, as with any fixed damage number, if it's a consistent result, normally this means it's being done before any mitigations, before any multiplications, and before any effects to damage is going on. So that's what we're going to start with. So we've got Drake's attack based on the stages tool that we have on the Hell Hades website. And we know that the Drake is using his A1, which has a multiplier of 4. So therefore, we know that the raw damage that the Drake is going to do is 32,836. Now, obviously, we're going to be attacking the Drake, so we need to know what the Drake's defensive mitigation is. And for floor 2 in Doom Tower Hard, this would be 4,865. And when we pass it through the damage reduction calculator, and the formula that produces the reduction, it'll come out as 81.68%. So those are the raw numbers we need to work on. So assuming that it does work raw, it's safe to say that it's going to take the 32,836 and multiply that by 15%, because he obviously reflects 15% back. And that would give us a number of 4925. Now that number is going to get passed back to Drake, and it's going to go through his damage reduction. So we take the 4925 and multiply it with the damage reduction formula by doing a 1 minus the damage reduction number. And Geomancer will always place weaken, so we need to take that into account as well. So we need to increase the damage that the Drake will take by 25%. And that leaves us with that 1128 number that we were taking. So let's just head back into the game and run some tests just to confirm that 1128. So we're back in Doom Tower Floor 2, and we've got the HP burn out on the target. So based on the math that we've assumed, we should be expecting to see 1128 for every attack that Bistolphus receives back onto this Drake that has HP burn. So we have 1128 and another 1128. So that's the first test done. Now let's consider some things that might impact this number. So the next thing we're going to look at is ally protection. So we're back in the spreadsheet here and we're going to assume the same thing. So we know that we've confirmed that 1128. So we know for a fact now that the 15% is based on the raw damage that the Drake is going to do. So assuming the math is correct, we would assume that Ally Protect is going to halve the damage that Geomancer reflects. Let's take a look and see if that's the case. So we're back at the same floor again, and this time I'm going to bring in Lodric, who is a single target ally protector. Now all my ally protection champions happen to be in Guardian, so for this test we should see a slightly different number because it will be 10% lower. But for the purposes of testing, we'll just chuck this in now and see that it is actually correct. So we're going to put HP burn out here. So we're assuming it's going to be half the number it was before at 564. So I'm going to protect. And we'll just hit one more skill and let's see what we get here. 508. Now again, I said this number was lower and this is the impact of a Guardian set. So let's just test this for 1 second. Let's come out of here and let's just take the Guardian piece off Lodric to ensure that it is 100% accurate. So we will just take this piece off for this time being. We'll set it back up, bring in Geomancer into the lead, and again we'll place the HP burn, run through our skills, place the ally protection. Now we'll see 564. So that confirms that ally protection will halve the amount that is reflected back. So far we've confirmed that it's a raw damage. This makes sense. That is what drives the amount of damage that is reflected back. And we know that ally protection is halved. And then also in that previous test that you saw, the first number that was being produced was 508. And that was the impact of Guardian. So Guardian sets effectively reduce Geomancer's reflection damage by a further 10% for every additional Guardian set that's in place. So in this instance, we'll do a quick test just to prove this by having 2 Guardian sets in there. We should expect to see that the reflect amount is 914, as this is one Guardian set multiplied by another Guardian set, and this is just a reduction of 10% each time. So what we want to look at now is multiple Guardian sets. So we know that ally protection is halving the amount of damage, and we know that the 508 was the impact of one Guardian set, reducing the damage by another 10%. So the hypothesis here is that another Guardian set will essentially reduce the damage again by a further 10%. Now, I have Vasulfin Guardian that we're going to test this with. He also has Bulwark, and Bulwark acts exactly the same way as Guardian. It will reduce the damage by another 5%. So we should be expecting to see, as a result, that Geomancer reflects 868 damage back to the Bob. So we're back in now in the encounter. I've set up the team. We've got Vasulf and Lodric in Guardian, so that's 2 Guardian sets. We're not going to use Ally Protect, and we're just going to see if the numbers reflect what we expect, which is 868. So we'll place HP Burn, and we will just run through the skills here just to get us into position. So we're not going to use that. We're just going to place this here, and we're going to throw that out here. Right, so the next ability now attacking Bistolphus here should be 868 as a reflection back to this target. So let's see, 868. So this is a reproducible number. So we know now, based on this math, how this calculates. But there is another issue now, which is what happens with multiplication effects, and that's what we're going to deep dive into now. So we're going to look at Wave 1 floor now. This is an AoE ability. We're going to look at some masteries and other impacts that we'll have on Geomancer, which in a normal instance probably wouldn't have an impact. If we go back to the ally protection video that we did, masteries and multipliers such as Gather and Fury were thrown out the window as soon as the ally protection amount was transferred over. This isn't the case with Geomancer's passive, and what we're going to realize quickly is how powerful and how somewhat broken this passive can become. So let's first look at a bit of a tweak here. So we're going to look at the AoE effect of multiple hits. Now we've set up this spreadsheet here to have the attack of Elenarl's A2 here that she will use on default. So she has an attack of 7662 with a multiplier of 4.7, and we know in this instance that we're going to be fighting against Bulwarks and Elenarl's. So we're going to be targeting the Bulwark with the HP burn, and he has a 6,993 defense and a damage reduction percentage of 84.2. So we know the AoE hit is raw, therefore we should be expecting to reflect 15% of 36011, but this is the first time Geomancer is also going to be hit. So he's going to be reflecting twice the value. And what you'll see is the first attack is the reflection of the allies, and the second attack is the reflection of the Geomancer. Now in the test we're going to be doing, we're going to have Aneri and we're going to have Bistofus. Now Aneri is in a stalwart set and has blast-proof masteries, whereas Bistofus just has blast-proof masteries. So what does that mean? We should be expecting to see that the blast-proof is actually going to work against Geomancer by reducing the damage he is going to put out by 5%. And Stalwart is going to do exactly the same thing as well. It's going to reduce the damage that he reflects by 30%. So even though the damage is being calculated raw, the actual final number is being affected by both by your allies, multipliers and artifact sets, the reduced damage here. So we should be looking here to see that Bistofus is going to reflect a proportion of 1014 from Geomancer's passive, and the hit that Aneri takes will reflect 710. Meanwhile, we should be expecting to see that Geomancer is going to reflect 1419 because he is effectively taking 30%. Now I need to just double check whether Geomancer has blast proof. If he doesn't have blast proof, that'll be 5% higher. We'll check this now when we test it. Okay, so we are in floor 1. Now you're probably thinking, why isn't Geomancer in the lead? Some of the tests that we've done here, because we haven't got an ally protection champion, it doesn't really matter where Geomancer is placed. Everyone is still covered by his protection. This would be different if we were bringing in an ally protection. Geomancer would need to go very high up in the team to ensure that the protection damage is reduced by 25%. You can see all of that in a previous video that is on the channel. That is for ally protection, where we go through it in detail. So let's run the test here. So again, just a reminder, we're looking at 1014 and 710, and then a second hit for 1419. So we'll place the HP burn here, and we will just cycle through some abilities. Okay, so let's slow this down just to make sure as we see more numbers. So we'll forget that number. Right, so 710, 1014, and the second hit is 1419. And just to reproduce that, 710, 1014, 1419. So what does that mean? So if we go back to the spreadsheet here, 1419 was the impact of having a stalwart set with blastproof mastery for Geomancer, which is 30% of the raw value. 710 would be if you had stalwart and blastproof, which is what Aneri had, and then 1014 was if you just had blastproof. So what this basically shows is that the masteries, the sets, they actually reduce the damage that Geomancer's passive will output, which begs the question then, what about other multipliers? And just one little quirk that we have found when we've been testing is it appears that the presence of weaken can be duplicated in terms of the damage that Geomancer does. So what I mean by that is I can have weaken on the enemy and that will increase the damage, but the damage is also increased by having weaken on the targeted champion. So in the instance I'm going to show you now, Bistofus should reflect 1014 as in all our previous tests, but because he has a minor weaken, that is increased by 15% even though the enemy also has weaken from Geomancer. So we'll just show that now in the math here, so you can see that it's got a 15% multiplier on the damage that was blast proof, which was the damage that Bistofis has taken due to his mastery. So let's just see this in action. So I've got a game ready to pause, and you'll see here now he's got that on, and actually he's doing 1166. I know it was very quick, so if you want to slow the video down, but effectively 1166. So I'm not sure that's intentional, whether it should be, but effectively there's no reason why Geomancer couldn't deal 15% more. It is a double-edged sword. Obviously having weaken on your own champion means that any damage he receives is still going to be 15 or 25% more, but it doesn't also mean that you can gain double the benefits of Geomancer's passive. So what does this mean in the big picture? Effectively, Geomancer's passive works from raw damage. That raw damage is then multiplied by 15 or 30%. That damage is then reduced by the enemy's damage reduction percentage based on their own defense numbers, and any effects you have on the target, such as decreased defense, is included, including ignore defense. Then it is reduced by the damage of any defensive multiplier on the champion that is being attacked. So that could be stalwart or blast proof. And then also it's increasing by any multiplier on the enemy, like weaken and increased damage, if the champion has weaken itself. So unlike ally protection, which is completely unaffected by these multipliers, Geomancer's passive appears to be affected by all types of multipliers wherever they are. So we're going to take this into a clan boss run now, and we're going to look at what happens with Gathering Fury. If the hypothesis that any multiplier applies the damage, then Gathering Fury theoretically is going to do that as well. So we're going to have a look at some screen captures here, and we're going to see where we are. So we have a clan boss running now with Geomancer in the comp in lead position. And what we'll see in some of the examples here is the impact of the allies' reflection and then Geomancer's reflection. So Geomancer will reflect the first portion as all of the 4 allies. Now we're focusing on the A2 for the affinity boss. Now the A2, the affinity boss, hits once with a 2 times multiplier and once with a 1 times multiplier, so 2 attacks in total. So when we look at the screenshots and we look at the math, you will see the 2 hits from the reflection from Geomancer. But it's good here to see how the reflection does work like that consistently, that the first chunk of numbers that we see, that is all for the allies' reflection at 15%, and then the second attack will be his reflection. Now, as most people know, similar to Brogni, he will proc Giant Slayer with this reflection, which is what makes him kind of broken here. If you have Giant Slayer with Geomancer, he will do the damage on top of the reflection. Now what is different a little bit to Brogni is the reflection damage is slightly higher here because of the multiplication effect rather than it being based on the shield value. Effectively, once Brogni's shield starts getting broken down a bit, you stop losing the reflection quality. So let's go into some examples here. So we're back on the spreadsheet and we've got everything coded in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to return it back to a non-debuffed clan boss, and it doesn't have an increased attack. Obviously we're on Spirit Affinity for the example, so he does have opportunities for applying increased attack. So let's take a look at the numbers here. So 6993 is the Ultra Nightmare clan boss's attack, and we're going to be looking at specifically his A2 ability, which is a 2 times or a 1 time. So I've just included a 1 times multiplier. We'll have a look at the second hit and we can change this number to test it. Now the clan boss defense here has got 1520. In this team that we're running, Geomancer is running in Savage and Cruel. So he has 30% ignore defense, and we also have decreased defense up, and we have weakened. So the damage reduction number becomes 21%. You can kind of see the formula there. It's a bit complicated, but effectively that is what it would be with the ignore defense. So we've got the raw damage being 6993, and then that means that Geomancer, which is the champion we're going to be focusing on rather than the targets, because the math is easier to see. There's less numbers. We don't have to try and look into it. Will be a 2517 transfer. Now, there is an affinity issue here. So the affinity does matter in the sense that if the clan boss strong hits the Geomancer, then it will reflect 20% extra back. That does come into effect. Now, whether or not the critical hit happens, it doesn't reflect more for a critical hit. It will just reduce it by any masteries that are subject to critical hit. But if it is a strong hit, it will increase that by 20%. So we're going to assume that it isn't a strong hit to start with. And then we pass that to the damage reduction. So the 2098 reduces down to 1657. And then we put it into weaken for 1.25. Obviously, weaken comes with Geomancer's ability. So we're going to start at turn 2 here. And that means there is no Gathering Fury applied. So that would be still 2042. Now we know that multiplication effects from champions like weaken, from abilities, from anything like that, impacts the amount of damage that gets output. Therefore, by assumption, we would expect offensive masteries to be the same thing. So the typical ones one you would bring is bring it down and single out, which is 8% and 6%. And you would also probably bring Grim Resolve. So at this point early on, we're not going to have Grim Resolve, so we'll take 5% out. So that should leave us with 2372. Now, Geomancer has Blast Proof, likely. Actually, I think this Geomancer did not have Blast Proof, but it did have Delay Death. Now, one thing we notice with Delay Death is each individual reflection will trigger Delay Death. So if you've reflected the first 4, then probably by the end of the first reflect, you're at the cap. But we will see that we will be able to pick that based on changing this number up here from 0.06 to whatever number we feel that Delay Death is at currently. And then obviously, if it's a critical hit, we need to reduce it by a further 8%. So these are the numbers. So let's just get the screenshot up now of the turn 2 hit, and we can see where it falls and see if we can reproduce the math. So this is at turn 2, so no Gathering Fury. The Geomancer's got HP burnout. Now, there's some things we need to note here. The clan boss has increase attack weak, and he also has decrease attack strong. So we need to adjust the spreadsheet for those numbers. But we're looking to see whether 3451 and 172 are reproducible in our math. So let's just have a quick check of the spreadsheet now and go from there. Okay, so we're back in the spreadsheet now. So I've made an adjustment to 6993. I've reduced it by 50% for the decrease attack and then increased it by 25% for his own buff. So that goes through. Great, we can adjust these. Now what we also need to do is determine where we are at on the Delay Death stack list. So we can see here that I've picked J8 column, which is stack 5. And that produces our 1712. So what have we worked out here? So we've basically determined that so far, without Gathering Fury in kind of conversation, that the math is working correctly. Now, obviously, we didn't get critically hit, so that improved parry hasn't triggered. But if we did, then it would reduce that number. And the offensive masteries are increasing it, and we're then decreasing it back down based on the Delay Death. Now, if we were to increase the multiplier by 2, we would get 3424. Now going back to the screenshot that we had, we were on 3451. So if we increase that to 2, it's 3541. But obviously we need to peel back a layer of the Delay Death, because that is only the 3rd time or the 4th time it would have stacked. So pulling that back to stack 4, which is 3%, produces 3451. So far the math is all matching up. This is how it works. So the question is, what happens when we start getting into Gathering Fury territory? Is that going to continuously increase and multiply the damage? So let's take a look now at turn 26. So I've captured a screenshot of turn 26. So we can see that there's 2 hits going on again. The higher number is the 2 times multiplier and the lower number is the 1 times multiplier. So clearly something is multiplying the damage. So the obvious assumption here is Gathering Fury. But let's just double check that is actually using the clan boss's multiplier for Gathering Fury. Now I've just thrown up onto the screen the multiplier for the Gathering Fury on the 2 tiers. We're about on the 2nd tier, so it's a 7.5 plus the damage multiplied by the turn order. Now interestingly, what I've discovered from this testing is the display turn count that the clan boss is showing here at 26 is actually turn 27 from this formula. So it's 27 minus 19, and that's how many stacks there need to be counted for the math. And I'll just show that to back that up here. So I've made some adjustments here. Obviously there's no decrease attack or increase attack, so I've returned the clan boss's attack to normal, and I've increased our Delay Death stack now to the maximum now that we're 26 turns in. So as I said, the turn order on the screen shows 26, but when we did the math on the multiplier to be 26 minus 19, which is what the multiplier suggests, the number was too low. However, increasing it by 1 turn returned the right numbers. So I'm pretty confident that the displayed number is actually 1 turn extra when it counts to Gathering Fury, which is not a significant issue for most people as they don't really track that, but it's a bit of a quirk to understand that. So let's pass it through here. So this is the formula that I've put in here. So I've basically said we're over turn 20, so we need to consider the Gathering Fury stack. Let's take the 7.5, add in our base value we've got here, and then multiply it by 1 minus to the turn order plus 1 minus 19. So that increases 2072 up to 32,113. Now obviously we're still off the number, which is 33,381. But we passed it through the offensive masteries. So we're now so late in the clan boss that we're in Grim Resolve territory. So the Geomancer is below 50% HP. We've still got Single Out. We've still got Bring It Down. So that increases the damage by 38601. And then we pass that through to 6% damage reduction from Delay Death, which is 36285. But this hit was critical. So the clan boss critically hit him on the second hit, which means that the damage reflected was reduced by a further 8% from improved parry. And that gets us back to 3382, which we can see here on the screenshot, 3381. That 1 or 2 is a rounding issue. If I was to probably increase the XL, we'd probably see it's 33,800 point something. And that's just a thing of whether it's actually attack is 6993.1 or 0.2. Now, what if we were to increase the multiplier by 2? So we know the damage we're looking for should be double. So we return it back. Now on the screen here, we had 72,568. Now the first hit didn't crit. So it means that the defensive masteries didn't go through improved parry, which means we returned 72,568. So the conclusion here is that Gathering Fury, the formula that the clan boss used, is the same formula that Geomancer uses to multiply his own reflect damage. And we'll just reproduce this one last time at turn 38. So we're at turn 38, we're starting to see larger numbers now in the Geomancer Reflect. We've got a 96,562 and a 44,418. What you can't see on this screenshot is the clan boss did have decreased attack. However, the damage numbers were so great because of all the giant slayers that he lost that decreased attack. But we'll see in the math that I've adjusted for that. And the other thing to note is the second hit the first hit was a strong hit. It seems to me that it doesn't matter whether the first or the second hit was strong. If either are strong, then the reflection is a strong hit. So we'll show this number now when we go back to the thing. So we're back on the spreadsheet here, and we've configured the attack down. So we've put the 1.25 for the increased attack, and we've put the 50% damage reduction on the increase on the 50% decreased attack. We've plugged this in and we've increased the reflection amount by 1.2, which represents a strong hit. Technically, strong critical hit should be 1.3, but 1.2 seems to be the number he's reflecting, I guess because the critical hit is never counted in that sense. Now we pass these through the damage numbers as per previous, and we put it through. Now we've adjusted for turn 38, which means we have more stacks, which means the Gathering Fury is increased to 42,731. We're still applying the offensive masteries, and we're still applying the defensive delay for Delay Death. Now, the second hit was a critical hit. So once again, it goes through improved parry, and we return back to the 44419. If we were to increase the multiplier to 2, we would realize that, okay, the first hit didn't crit, but 96564 translates to 96562. Probably a rounding issue at these large numbers and the multiplication. So that demonstrates that Geomancer's passive is ultimately hugely broken. Any multiplication effect seems to increase it. Any reduction effect seems to decrease it. Doesn't particularly matter where in the team order you place him unless you're using ally protection. Everyone still receives the 15%, and HP burn doesn't appear to need to be up to apply the 15% damage reduction either. If you are using him for the reflect damage, as most people have noted, he has to be the one placing the HP burn, so you need to configure your tune to always place the HP burn after any other HP burn. If you're using Tyrant, then he needs to always make sure that Geomancer goes after Tyrant's HP burn. But I hope that was a bit of interest. I know it's a bit of a long video again. These videos are designed to be a quite in-depth, in detailed math assessment. It's not going to be for everyone, but we will chapter them at the bottom so you can jump in and deep dive. But I hope that makes sense. And if anyone has any questions or anyone has any follow-ons, please put it in the comments, and we'll address them and we'll reply to them. But thanks very much for watching, and I'll catch you in another video.